We are live. Welcome. Hello, everyone there in Facebook land. You need to stay tuned to this episode or watch it on the flip side. If you have ever wondered, if you're over 40, that's a good start, why you need to weight train over 40. And there's some pretty interesting facts that our guest is going to share with us, who's an expert in that field. I'm also interested in her talking about some good mood foods. Can foods really help your mood? I think they can. And wow, what great medicine that doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to have a pharmacy card or pay a deductible. It's in the food we eat. So stay tuned to hear about that. And then another interesting, which you might have heard of, intermittent fasting. Our guest is going to tell us what it is and what are the benefits. And I think you'll be surprised. I know I was when I was researching intermittent fasting that, it's not eating for like a day or two. It's much different than that and changes for everybody. So I'm Kat Trulinos with Ta-Da by Kat, Next Level Staging and Design, if we haven't met, where we transform spaces, whether to sell or to dwell, with our team and magical transformations. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest, who is also a design client and all the way from Australia, replanting herself here in Texas with her products, her expertise, and her Facebook page, Middle-Aged Muscle. Am I saying it right?
The Middle-Aged Muscle Movement.
The Middle-Aged Muscle Group.
Movement.
So a little tidbit.
Yeah.
We're going to give all her contact information at the end, but she's got a group, the Middle-Aged Muscle Group. So without further ado, Christine Envall, thank you so much for, I think you're in you're in Houston now because you're closing on your house.
Yeah.
Congratulations, closing on Monday. Yeah. So she's been traveling back and forth from LA to Houston to Australia, and we're glad to have her here today. Christine, welcome, and tell us a little bit about Christine and how you became passionate about, working out and health and that whole, arena.
Okay. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. It's actually my first international appearance. Like obviously Australia, I do a lot of work, but I haven't done anything in the US specifically. So thank you for letting me be on today.
Awesome. 67th episode. We're happy to have you. Yeah.
Thank you. So how I got into it was a long time ago now. Like I always, as a young person, was very interested in food. But back in those days, as you know, back in the 70s and 80s, there was no information on food. Like there was nothing. Right. You basically bought food and that was it. And, as a younger child, I was a little bit overweight.
And we never read labels. We were never taught to read labels either, were we?
Well, there was nothing on them. Like that's the whole point.
Right.
Like there was the nutritional panels came onto food. I think it was in the later 90s. So in the 70s and 80s, you bought food and you ate food, and you didn't really know what was what. So I always had an interest in it, and I always enjoyed cooking and looking at the impact that food had on the body and had on body weight. And I got introduced to weight training at about 16 when a friend of mine had anorexia, because again that was really prevalent back in the 80s. Like
right.
people were getting very, very sick from that, because it was the trend wasn't about being strong and healthy, the trend was about being skinny.
Yes.
Which wasn't realistic, because a lot our bone structures are different. But this friend of mine took up weight training, and I was like just fascinated by how the muscles grew. Like she started off with a little marble in her arm, like her bicep, and it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And she kept saying, you should come along, try out the gym. And what I found, I went along with her and absolutely loved it, because it was the one thing that could control my body shape. You would diet and you would feel thinner, but you couldn't really guarantee, not that you can spot reduce, but you basically were losing muscle mass, losing lean tissue or losing body fat. Whereas weight training allowed you to actually shape tighten, because a lot of the time, you feel like you're out of shape because something's loose. It's not toned, for want of a better word. So essentially that's what got me into it, was wanting to improve, how my body looked. and not have to be always like a slave to trying a diet. Along the way, I came across competitive bodybuilding, and got into that. Found out that I actually had genetics for growing muscle, and went along like that. But that essentially shaped my entire career, because when at that stage I was in my final years of of high school. So in Australia we go from high school to university, and I came across a course called Food Science and Technology, which essentially was learning all about nutrition, all about food, how to make food, how to maintain the quality of food. So that was basically the degree that I did. They've now changed the name to Food Science and Nutrition, because technology is not a sexy word. Everyone wants to know about nutrition, but essentially, we learned all the chemistry of food, all of the physiology of the body, because obviously how food and the body and how they interact is perfect partnership, and then that basically was my career, went into that, and then that's over the years then led to how I have a supplement company, because obviously being able to develop the products, knowing the science behind them, also knowing how to make them taste good, because that's very, very important. We want to eat the right thing, but if it doesn't taste good, then we tend to want to go eat the thing which tastes good. So working with healthier products, making them taste as good as possible, but understanding also the performance side, because obviously I do a sports supplement brand, International Protein, so it's all about sports performance and recovery, and people who are basically pushing their bodies as hard as possible. So that's a little bit about me, how I got into it. And then obviously now we talked about the middle-aged muscle movement. Now it's, as I'm 49, which I know is not a I've got a you're a great inspiration for your energy, and I know that
I'm 89.
but I don't know.
89, guys. but
I know that you'll relate.
The body does start to to deteriorate muscle mass. I think we talked about that with my guest last week, because by the way, Christina's wrapping up our self-love month. We're going to go into a March Madness theme for March, and it's not what you think. It's not basketball. The over 40, our body starts losing muscle mass, right?
Yes.
Like it seems small, but it adds up after years, right? If we don't do anything.
Exactly, and that's the the whole key point there, is that if we don't do anything. And I think that if you go back 50 years or even a little bit longer, we by default did a lot more activity, obviously, because we didn't have the convenience of washing machines, of cars, of drive-throughs, of
control.
Exactly. So everything that we did, or people walked a lot more. People had to use their own physical movement, and a couple of things with that. One is obviously that a lot of the calories that we burn throughout the day, like there's obviously our basal metabolic rate, which is just basically our breathing and our keeping us alive. Right. But the next biggest chunk of calories that we burn is through what they call incidental movement, and that's things like walking to this, lifting this box up, just basic movement. We know if you're doing housework, basic movement. The more that we've so that also helps to keep the muscle active. You don't have to necessarily at that point be lifting weights, but you just need to be keeping the body moving. As we've progressed over the years, we've made everything easier for ourselves. So we've really taken away that need to actually use our body. We can sit in a car, we can sit in a chair, we sit at a computer. Even you think about it, like hitting an old-fashioned typewriter was more physical than tapping on a cell phone or using a keypad like what we use now. So we've essentially just kind of diminished the amount of activity that we need to do, because we want to have more leisure time, we want to make things easier. But that for our body is the opposite of what we need to do, because as you said, we naturally do decline and start to lose muscle mass. But what research shows now is that by keeping active, by maintaining resistance training, and also obviously cardio as well, but those things will actually help to reverse that, or not reverse it, but also maintain it for a lot longer. So you don't have to accept that that's just going to happen. And again, that was kind of the mentality maybe of our parents, where,
Yes.
oh, you were 40, you were over the hill.
You're 40, you cut your hair short, you were older, you
yeah, like you basically gave
fell
up.
into, age is something that just happens, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't have to be. We can live our best life, and we can, diminish or.
Oops, I think.
Oops. Oh, there we go.
Oops, it just froze.
I know some people, and I want to get to the other topics as well. So I want to wrap up in a couple of minutes on this topic. But do go to your middle-aged muscle group on Facebook. Anybody who'd like to get involved and find out what what's being dialogued there, because you'll get some great information. But for folks, I know time is always an issue, and I think there's a misnomer that you have to be doing weight competition and working out in the gym for 2 hours. You don't have to. There are so many people, people who do have to go to an office, and even if you're in a home office like I am, you can set a timer to go, every whatever, 45 minutes, I'm going to get up, or I'm going to have a small weight next to me and do, 15 curls on each side. Would that be effective?
It would. Anything's better than nothing. But I think the best approach for people is the latest research coming out is about 2 to 3 days a week. So it's not like every day of the week you need to do something. They are saying that as little as one set is going to help. But if you have 20 to 30 minutes, and exactly like you said, there's plenty of very compact machines where there's various resistance bands. Like, people think weights as being the traditional weight that you would see in a gym, but really weight training is resistance training. So it's something which gives more resistance than just your body weight. So there's all kinds of bands.
So for folks who don't know what that is, it can be the stretch bands. I mean, I love my little pouch with my resistant bands. I can take that on a trip and, put it on my legs and do, side, whatever you call them, side walks,
Side steps and leg lifts.
So that's equivalent to, having a membership at a gym and using a machine, right?
Yeah, like that's something that's kind of like the if you have the time, if you have the availability, you have the money to go and do that. Because the thing with a gym, I find, is that it's a different environment, and I think where people sometimes struggle with motivation, because at home it's always there, and it can always be 5 minutes late. I can do it in 5 minutes, and then the day's gone. For some people, the process of and I think that's where the gyms come in. Plus, you can get expert advice from a trainer. Most gyms are offering that type of thing too, where as part of the membership, they'll teach you how to train. Because I think a lot of people have that fear of all these machines, and if I use it wrong, and what is it going to do to me if I use it wrong? So I think
so not to be intimidated by those machines, but learn how to use them correctly. But
as I said, it's anything's better than nothing. And I think, like all things as well, like I started out on a 3-day-a-week program, circuit training, 1 circuit, which went to 2 circuits, which went to 3 circuits, which then went to 4 days a week, and it grew over a period of time. It wasn't like I launched in and I was doing 6 days a week and training like that. It's something which, as my passion grew for it, the amount of time that I dedicated to it put in, because I think we all talk about time, and it's not that you don't have the time for it. It's not a priority.
You don't schedule it. We all have the same time. You don't schedule it.
Schedule it. Exactly. Yeah. It's not a priority for you. And I think that as we get over 40, it needs to become a priority. And I actually, this is, on food, but food and exercise. I read somewhere that someone said, if you're not eating like an adult, or, training and being conscientious and mindful by the time you're in your 30s even, it's time to grow up, because you can't just leave stuff to chance anymore. Like, you need to actually, what I'm going to say is that the benefit of having more energy from doing it, like, people think, oh, I'll be so tired from training, but the actual benefit is that you have more energy in everything else. So not doing anything gives you less energy. So the more you rest, the less energy you have.
Yes.
The more you
And
do, the
I
more
think
energy
so
you
many of
have.
us, the over 40 concept, we all had racing, or most of us had racing, or faster. Let's just say that, because everybody's, there's some people who just naturally skinny. I've always had to, be conscious on my weight, but definitely my metabolism was much, faster in my 20s and 30s. And so, it naturally diminishes. And you mentioned something, though, that I thought was interesting. You said if you've been exercising and conscious in your 30s, is that along with the concept of that muscle has memory? Because I've noticed that it's like I cannot be, and then all of a sudden I work, I was like, wow, that really, I really built my biceps really quick in a short amount of time. I believe it's because of that muscle memory. Is that a true concept?
It is like like the muscle revolumizes because essentially muscle tissue is there's a lot of water going into making up like an actual muscle, and the cells themselves. It is actually quite hard to lose muscle once you've had it, but it will devolumize. So when you, I guess, amp it up again by making it work, it revolumizes. It stores more creatine. It stores more glycogen. The water comes in with the glycogen, and it gives you that appearance that it's grown. So yeah, it definitely does because the fibers and everything have been laid down and have been created. So that's
the
where
foundation has been laid down. So that's good news, people. If you're out there and you worked out younger but you stopped, good news is you're going to have an accelerated increase and success because you laid the foundation for the muscle already.
Yep. But for anyone who has never done it before,
yes,
they are also going to have rapid changes because it's like the body's gone from nothing to all of a sudden, the calorie burn that you get from including weight training and the increase in muscle mass, because a lot of the metabolism is directly related to how much lean muscle mass you have. So as you get older and it diminishes, then that's where the metabolism's dropping, is from not holding as much lean body weight. So people who come into it from nothing, it's almost like the shock to their body is so great that the changes also happen really, really quickly. So someone who's done it constantly and never stopped is actually in the hardest position because their body's gotten used to a certain amount of work and they kind of need to maintain it. So if you've done it, stopped and come back to it, that's great. And if you've never done it before and you come back to it, the hardest thing is actually people like myself who've always been highly into it, where I see that I have to increase the intensity and change up what I'm doing to keep ahead of the game. Otherwise, my body just like it gets so resistant to doing everything. Like it's so fit for it.
That. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I totally know what you're talking about on that. That can be a little frustrating, but then it's just change it up. And that's where working with a trainer, working with, someone at the gym or a personal trainer really helps because they mix things up, and they know what you've done in the past and will change up your routine. And then the muscles go, oh, hey, okay.
Yeah. And there's so many different ways that you can train as well. Like, again, when I started, there was some really basic stuff, and now people's imagination has really opened up. So it's almost like there's a limitless number of exercises. So you're never going to get bored. Because that's some people's thing. Weights are so boring, like it's going in and doing bench press. But there's so much more.
They get bored and stop it. And you and I talked before the show. It's really a mind-body connection. And if you're bored in your mind and just going through the routine, and you're not having to work or seeing that muscle, we studies tell us that the mind, everything is energy. The mind talks to the body and tells the body what to do. So if you're out here on, just going through the routine, it's not going to be as effective.
No, and that's the thing. Like, because obviously to me, weights isn't boring because you're always having to focus. It's actually now, as I've gotten older, a form of meditation. Which, if you think about what meditation is, it's focusing on mind on a point. That will be focusing on the mind-muscle connection and really like having your mind in the muscle that you're working and keeping that focus, because a set will last a good 45 seconds to sometimes
I like that. That could be a whole other
actually keep your mind.
Yeah, that could be a whole other Facebook group, Mind Muscle Connection. I like
Connection.
that.
Yeah. So
Muscle
it's for people who can't sit still and meditate. It is actually classified as a form of meditation. So I actually find that as my centering piece now. Like I do HIIT training and I do more different cardio work to burn my energy and to really go wild. But in the gym, it's a very, very centered, internal experience now, and it actually helps to kind of really clear my mind and focus. So I think
Yes,
it's part of the
yes.
balance.
I can so see that, and I think in part that might be why it becomes not addictive, but it's like something you look forward to because
Yeah.
your brain and body and muscles like that. They like you feeding them oxygen and straining them so that they can be better and bringing that blood flow and I mean
The breathing,
yes,
controlling the
yes,
breathing and
it
everything.
increases your endorphins and your oxytocin and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So who doesn't want all of that? Like
Yeah,
who doesn't want?
natural. Your body is a natural pharmaceutical. Wow,
Yes, and
that's
even
amazing.
pain killing. Like it'll, after you've trained, your body does actually put out the hormones to actually numb off the pain and reduce the pain. And that's where we were talking about the coffee the other day, and
Oh,
the coffee actually has
is
that
that
has
why it
a
takes 24 hours or more?
to
And
feel
again,
the
as I'm on this earth longer, both my husband and I have both experienced that. It takes longer to. Well, even working out 3 times a week, I feel like I'm in pain all the time. I mean, I feel something all the time, but I look at that as like, oh, okay, I worked that out. Oh, yeah, I worked that out. I mean, sometimes it hurts a little, but not like injury hurt.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like there is obviously a longer time to recover, as we get older, and again, that's where supplement company and supplements come in, because there's different amino acids that you should be taking to help with that recovery. So I find that if I don't take those, I definitely notice my body doesn't recover as quickly. So because we're using it more than a sedentary person, we do need to be mindful of that. And again, they're natural amino acids that are coming from either like dairy products normally or plant material. And we have a product called Complete Aminos, which is all of the essential amino acids which your body needs to recover. And you have that straight after a workout or even during a workout. And you just, like you feel like your muscle almost like revives because it gets in there and helps
well, I'm
with
gonna have
that.
to check that out. Yeah, I completely forgot about that when I used to train pretty hard quite a few years ago. I think she had me take amino acids. So your product is called Plain Amino.
Complete
Oh,
as in
complete.
all, because has all of the essential amino acids
Okay, perfect.
which you need for recovery. So so that I'm very I guess spoiled because I have access to supplements, and that's my bread and butter, is basically knowing what's going to make me be able to perform better because of the type of training that I had to do beforehand.
Right.
And then for me, it's interesting when I give it to somebody who's never used supplements before, and just like the wow experience that they have is like, oh, I didn't know it could be like this.
I think people they're just not aware that supplements can be just so body changing. So let's go right into another talking point that we had outlined here, and that is good mood food. So can moods really improve your mental health and your mood? And what would you say let's just say the top 3 foods that someone listening could eat to change their mood? Because we all want a better mood, right?
Yeah. So berries is one of the number one foods. So that's your blueberries, any of your red berries, because of the anthocyanins that are in those, have a lot to do with mood. Believe it or not. So
what about strawberry? Not so much.
Strawberries are in there as well, but I think your blueberries really is your number one. Darker skin.
And they're huge antioxidants also, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah. So that's one really, really great food to have. Obviously, dark chocolate is another one.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you all hear that? Dark chocolate. Now I know many of us love chocolate, but it's not the milk chocolate. It's got to be the dark, at least 80% or 75%.
Like I personally will go have like a 92 or 95%. which is a bit of an acquired taste, but it literally, like, there's, virtually no added sugar in that, because sugar is the bad. Sugar is the opposite of
sugar is evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I found these keto, and everybody, people who have done keto before, they're readily found. I've got these little chocolate keto bites, and I think they're about 90%, and then they use stevia for whatever little bit of sugar. But I'll have, one of those with my tangerines or an apple or something else, just because it is strong. But to cut it, but it gives me that chocolate, which is good for your heart, not only your mood, but your heart, right?
Exactly. The polyphenols and specifically the cocoa polyphenols help with blood flow, but also mood elevation is, really, really a good one. But as you said, you don't need a lot, like, little couple, an ounce at the most, like half an ounce, up to an ounce.
And it's so rich and so dark. It's really satisfying. You find, you don't really need to sit and, eat a whole thing of Oreo cookies.
Because it's so strong.
It is. So what's the third top one you would?
Salmon. So salmon it's a food that I personally didn't like, because the smell of cooking. I was like, oh no, I don't want to have salmon. Right. There's just so much good stuff going on with salmon because of the omega fats that are in there. A lot to do with brain health.
So I'm going to ask you about this because Christine, happen to love salmon. But what kind of salmon? I'm reading Tony Robbins' book right now, Life Force. Amazing book. If you're interested in health, regenerative medicine, he's interviewed like the top of the world's experts in all kinds of medicine. But they talked about salmon, and I don't remember. The book is like this thick. I'm only in the beginning of it, but I know there's certain kind of salmon. Oh, that's what prompted me. He found out that he had high mercury because he thought, he's doing really good. He's eating fish, salmon, and swordfish and everything, and they found out he had high levels. He basically had metal toxicity. He had high levels of mercury. So how do we make sure we don't have mercury in our salmon?
So now this is something which is actually really specific to this area, America. Maybe Europe, Australia, it isn't an issue. And interesting that you talk about that, because when I said I had a huge interest in food as a teenager, there was a famous actress, I can't remember, I think she was in Dallas or something, just like this actress, and she got mercury poisoning from eating a lot of tuna. Same thing.
Tuna, that's the other thing that's supposed to have. He ate tuna and salmon. That was it.
Yeah, but what it is that the water where you're fishing from here is basically polluted. So in Australia, we don't have that issue. Our water is really clean. So it's not something that is an issue, but obviously something which is wild caught is going to infer that it's not, I guess, kind of bred up in a specific area. But I would honestly, in America, I would be doing a little bit of investigation as to where people actually catch, because it's more the region. So like they imply wild caught is better, but if it's wild caught from an area which is not great,
See, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think that's what we try to get is wild caught, but
where is it caught? Australian salmon. I mean, and again, this isn't, I don't know whether it's available here, but I know in Australia I eat Tasmanian salmon, which is like, Tasmania is that little island off the bottom of Australia, which is super isolated, and all the best, cleanest food comes out of Tasmania basically. But I know you can get Australian beef over here. I don't know if you can get Australian salmon, but that's just what I would be looking for personally, because I know that the area where it's coming from. So whatever I'm doing, I would be specifically saying, where is this caught? Because the issue is,
and that's the same with the tuna, right?
Yeah, because the same thing. We have a lot of tuna fishing off the south coast of Australia, off of South Australia. Again, there's like nothing down there. The water's all very, very clean. So I'm very spoilt coming from Australia, because a lot of these issues aren't an issue over there, but over here they obviously are.
East Australia, we were had the opportunity to go to Rome a couple, 2, 3 years ago. I was speaking at one of the first International Association of Staging Professionals conference, and then we did a little traveling. And everywhere we ate, everything, it's already organic. It's, there's no hormones. It really is, unfortunately, exclusive to our country. Welcome
Yes.
to our country. You'll have to be importing your fish, my dear.
I'll make sure that someone will be doing it. Like
Someone will. But I'm so glad that you brought that up, because my husband and I just assumed wild caught. So and we eat a fair amount of. I mean, when I was training heavy, of course, I ate tuna every day. I think anyone who has trained eats a lot of tuna and a lot of fish. Yeah. We're very careful on our beef. We get our beef that's no hormones, massaged daily, all that kind of stuff. But I'm really going to have to investigate into the fish. So thanks for sharing that. But
potentially,
guys, if you want to, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because potentially if it's farm raised, then it may actually be cleaner than if it's out in a polluted ocean. So yeah, definitely. I personally
so it doesn't matter if it's farm or wild caught. You need to find out the waters. And I'm sure that information is out there. Being folks like you are so on the cutting edge of getting that information out there. That's really important. So I wanted to briefly. I know we're a little bit over the hour, but I think it's important to talk about the intermittent fasting. I can't say it. But before I do, just to recap, guys, anybody listening, jumping on, listening in the future, if you want to elevate your mood, you don't need any drugs. You don't need big pharma. You've got big pharma right in your supermarket. Make sure they're organic, preferably. Berries, any kind of berries will help elevate your mood. So start your day with berries and some yogurt, or berries and whatever that you eat for protein. And that can be strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, dark chocolate. I know we're all going to love that. Make sure it's at least 70 to 90% cacao, and look for keto. They have a lot of those products out there. 1 ounce. You don't want to gorge yourself, which with that high of cocoa, you probably wouldn't, because it is an acquired taste. But you do get, usually they sweeten the little morsels with some stevia, which is a natural sweetener extract. And then salmon is a superfood, Miss Christine is telling us. But just make sure, being in our country, that you check to see where it's farmed, in what waters. Don't know if we can get tuna and salmon from Tasmania or not, which
but if you can
but if you can get it, because we know it's very clean, but just check where it's. Just because it's wild caught, which is the big aha for me, doesn't mean it's not doesn't have mercury in it. And you've all heard about having metals or metal poisoning or mercury poisoning. You definitely don't want that. So let's move right into the last topic we're going to go over a little bit here, and that is, what can you share with us on the mysteries and the benefits, et cetera? And is it for everybody? With, maybe even someone who has, like me, borderline low blood sugar, intermittent fasting. Tell us what you can share on that topic, Christine.
Okay, so it's something which there's not one type only of intermittent fasting. So that name is given to any kind of diet where, potentially you are fasting for longer than the normal period. So normally you think about it, people would eat, sleep, eat again. So maybe 8 to 10 hours might be typical of what people would go between their last meal at night and breakfast. So with intermittent fasting, you're basically either compressing the time, like shortening the time that you would eat. So you might have 16 hours not eating and just 8-hour period where you're eating. That's one method. Or people do some things like they will have a full day without eating, and then they might eat normally for 2 days. There's various cycles where they might do 2 days of eating, 1 day of not eating, or they might have very low calorie on one particular day. So there's various different forms. The ones where you're not eating for a whole day are really impractical. Like most people, food kind of fills out the day, and unless you're flat chat busy on those days, you're going to be sitting there you miss
what do
that.
I do now?
So it's really not for everybody. Even though, like, you know, I do know people that follow like the warrior method, which I think is like one meal a day. Obviously, from a weight loss point of view, the theory is that you can't eat that many calories in that time frame, and that's why people lose weight. I beg to differ. I believe you can consume a lot of calories in a really short period of time.
Yes.
So if people are, you know, so hungry that they end up gorging, then, you know, that kind of defeats the purpose. But what I have found is that as I've gotten older, my body, and again, it's probably digestive processes and the way that my body's regenerating, is that I do about a 12 to 13 hour fast. So I guess it's kind of on the soft edge, or not hardcore. But I definitely find that from a weight loss point of view, I was at a bit of a plateau and a little bit stuck, eating my old methods. And I kind of went back and reviewed and said, you know, what's working, what's not working. I'm not bodybuilding anymore. I don't need to eat like this. And change my eating up around to shorten that period of time that I eat in. Still, I actually increased the number of calories I was eating, and I found that I lost weight. So looking into intermittent fasting,
You said you increased the amount of calories?
Increased just a minor amount, like about 300 calories. So I increased what I was eating, but I shortened the period that I was eating. So my dinner might be like 5 p.m. at night, and I'll have a very, just about 100 calories of a protein shake, later on, and then I don't eat again until 8 o'clock the next morning. So it's kind of like going from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. before, like between having like a solid meal.
Okay, let me address that, because that's one thing I've read about, and I want to make clear to anyone listening to this that, like you said, you ate your meal, let's say at 5 o'clock, and then maybe at 8 or so you had a protein shake, but you counted the fasting from the meal time from 5 o'clock.
So explaining that is the reason why intermittent fasting impacts on your health is because it's the action of insulin, which is the problem here. Like where people, the precursor to diabetes, or if people have diabetes, and that's what people are trying to avoid. That's like the whole basis of why people are eating keto, is because in the way that your body's processing food, it processes fats in a certain way, protein in a certain way, carbohydrates in a certain way. So they're all processed differently. And it's the carbohydrate consumption which has the impact on the insulin, and which overall has the impact on our metabolic syndrome. So it's, the basis as to why there's diabetes, why people are having cholesterol problems and blood pressure problems and what they call the metabolic diseases. It's not the protein doing it, and it's not the fat doing it. It's the carbohydrates.
It's the carbs. So just to be clear, so the protein shake is going to be, a couple of carbs, very minimal, if anything, of carbs. So because I think for people like me think, oh, well, that means I eat nothing, I drink nothing. But, I have read, and you've confirmed it now, that even when you, let's say you do the skip a day, that doesn't mean you don't eat anything. Well, it means you don't eat anything, but you can have, say, a couple of protein shakes during the day, and that counts as your fasting day. And the reason being is because you have zero to maybe minimal amount of carbohydrates. Is that correct?
So you're essentially allowing the carbohydrate metabolism part of your body to rest. So you're not invoking that system. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to resensitize that system. You're trying to basically give it a break, because that's what's happened with all of the, the processed carbohydrate, the refined sugar that we've been eating. So, and this is a whole other discussion to be had, but again, over the years, we've created a food system where our food's too easy to eat. It's too digestible, and then we've also loaded up the amount of carbohydrates that we've had, where we basically overloaded that system. So it's kind of like just fried the system, basically. So what you're trying to do is almost like clear that out, allow it to rest. The protein is not going to interfere with that system, so you can have a few calories coming in from that, helping with your recovery, but you're not messing with that carbohydrate metabolism system. So that's why I don't count the protein shake, and that appears to be working fine. But one of the other things they've found with intermittent fasting is what it does is basically, it's like it resets the genetic material, so it allows you to, so it has an anti-aging effect, because it's allowing parts of your DNA, I guess, to regenerate. So, and again, that's because you're giving your body that rest. Like you're not forcing it to have to always be processing food. So that's one of the big things from an anti-aging point of view, and why I think as we get older, it's something to really look into, because, and again, the low blood sugar, you would still need to look at what type of carbs you're eating and how that works for you over that period of time. But I actually found when I was eating a lot more carbohydrate and transitioning out of bodybuilding, that I had more problems with my blood sugar going up and down when I was eating more carbohydrate.
Yes.
So I don't eliminate my carbohydrate, but I
then
definitely
protein. Exactly.
Yes.
And you know what? I want to have you back in the future, Christine, if you're willing, and talk about. We'll talk about anti-aging, and sugar's going to be right in there, and and maybe go into the best eating, optimal health for longevity, because what we put in our bodies and our mouth does either accelerate our aging or slow it down. And I believe 65%, I think I just read 65% of the population at this time is over 60. It's never been this high in whatever record time. So there's a lot of people out there wanting to be aware of how they can live their best life, and to possibly slow down the aging process, improve their life so they can live their best life. One last question I want to ask you before we sign off, and that is, and I know we'll talk about it when we do the next episode, but protein. I know for myself that I sometimes throughout my life I wasn't getting enough protein, and I could feel its effect. What is kind of the rule of thumb for how much protein? Because I don't know if that's changed. I mean, I have a number. I want you to share your number. How would one figure out and track the optimal amount of protein one should get on a daily basis?
Okay, it did used to be based around how much activity. So there wasn't kind of like one number. It would be depending, are you weight training once a day? What are you actually doing? I still like the 1 gram per pound, regardless of what someone's doing, because protein isn't only good for you when you weight train. Like we talked about how, the carbohydrates can invoke that particular metabolism. Fat is good to a degree, but then there can be too much fat just because it takes extra oxygen to metabolize that. So you're basically making your body work harder there as well. So fat's essential, but at a certain amount. So what do you make up the rest of your calories with? It's got to be protein. And there's a really famous diet that is, there's the CSIRO, which is basically like the government scientific body in Australia, that created a diet, and they came up with some ratios of your protein, fat, and carbohydrate, which is actually very, very similar to a bodybuilding diet, which I found really interesting. So I track my protein as a percentage of my total calorie intake. So it does roughly end up working out around about that 1 gram per pound of body weight. But somewhere
that's surprising for me to hear, because I think I had it in my mind a half gram per pound of body weight.
No, that's for me, that's incredibly low. For someone who does absolutely nothing, that's probably adequate. But as I said, it's not just about what you need to recover your muscle. It's about the balance of the macros. So, you're wanting to, we don't want to eliminate our carbohydrate, but we don't need to be eating like 60%, like what the government, I know the American Dietary Society is still kind of purporting that 60% carbohydrate. It's like, what century are we in? There's so much research around.
Yeah. And I think they're teaching in school too. Yeah, things need to be updated.
And then obviously
I need to look into your protein powders. I have protein powders, but I guess it's hard, especially being I don't eat dairy for the most part. I'm real minimal dairy. I look and I don't think it would be really difficult for me to get a gram per pound. Is that per pound of where you want to be or where you're at?
It's actually, it really technically is your lean mass. So if someone's 200 pounds, but there's 150 of lean, then we would count the 150 of lean.
Oh, it's what your lean is. Okay, so if that makes a difference. Your lean so if you're 20% body fat, then it would be 80% of your weight that you would need 1 gram of protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
most people who are just, so if someone's, 15% body fat to 20%, which is normal, they would just count their total weight. It's more become like if someone was grossly obese, like 40% body fat, that I would bring it down. Like for my body weight, I'm 165 at the moment. I probably have 145 of lean weight, but I'll eat 160, like up in that range. Yeah. But as I said, I tend to work out when I'm looking at somebody's overall intake. I'll look at what is their daily intake of calories and then work it as a percentage of that. And as I said, it always falls out around about that same kind of level of that, 0.8 to 1.2. Like if someone's trying to actively grow muscle, they will go up as high as about 1.2. But the average person, 0.8 to 1, like 0.8 being on the very, very lower end of that. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say if you're eating, plant-based, then there are a lot more powders out now. There's a lot more, pea protein and, different nut proteins and hemp protein. And there's a lot of different options now, but you do have to be really mindful to combine, because obviously rice has a little bit of protein and legumes have a little bit of protein, and putting them together, you'll get a good amount of protein, but it is a higher volume of food that you need to eat than if you're eating, meat products and dairy. And
then this will be for another episode, but then I'd love to talk to you about the soy protein and the controversy on that for men or women. Yeah. Christina, thank you so much for all this great information. If you're watching this and you know someone who can benefit from this great information, please share it. And you can see this in about 48 hours on our YouTube channel. Please, if you haven't, go to YouTube, Tada, Tadabykat, and subscribe and hit the bell. You'll get notified when we have new content. And Christine, what's a good way for folks to, if they wanted to ask you any questions on the topics that we've talked about today or get a hold of you about your supplements, what's the best way to reach you?
The best way is via my website. So it is just literally my name, which I think is on the screen, so I don't have to spell that out, but christineenvall.com. And from there, it has links through to, the middle-aged muscle movement, to International Protein, my supplement company, Envall, which is another endeavor that I have, which is all around the aroma and mood. So I'm very big on mood, obviously, and doing everything that you can to enhance your mood naturally. So I do have a range of aromatherapy-based products, which is under the Envall brand. So all of that's on my Christine Envall website, so you can find your way there. And also that's where the best way to contact me. There's obviously a contact button on there if people want to ask questions or get a hold of me. Awesome. Thank you so much, Christine. And we're going to have you back once you get settled at a future date and broach some other topics and take a deeper dive into some other topics. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. As usual, make it a positive day. Be hopeful and stay connected. And we thank you so much for connecting with Christine and us today. And have a great weekend. Bye. Bye.